Welcome to the Flourish Podcast with Dr. Toni Engram, where you will hear straight from some of the best practitioners and leaders in wellness on how to take control of your family's physical, spiritual, and mental health, because we are all designed to flourish. As a reminder, this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the Flourish Podcast should be taken as medical advice. For your own specific medical advice, please always consult with your own healthcare providers. Now, on the show today, I am so excited. We have the very one and only Shawn Wells. Shawn Wells is celebrated as the world's greatest formulator in the supplement industry, is a seasoned nutritional biochemist with over 2 decades of experience. With a master's in Nutritional Biochemistry from UNC Chapel Hill, Shawn has formulated over 700 global products and holds patents for 20 novel ingredients. He's played pivotal roles in high-stake business acquisitions and has held significant positions, including Chief Science Officer at Biotrust Nutrition. His insights have been featured internationally, from documentaries like The Skinny on Fat and The Answer to Cancer, to prominent podcasts and TV appearances on Fox News Dallas and Good Morning LaLa Land. Beyond formulating, Shawn's expertise spans health optimization, biohacking, and anti-aging. Learn more from Shawn Wells at zonehalo.com, or you can follow him on Instagram at Shawn Wells. So, Shawn, I am so glad you're here today. This is going to be so fun.
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready. Okay. Let's do it.
All right, Shawn, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your career's journey. You've got so many stories to tell, so you bullet point however you want to bullet point and expand on whatever you want to expand on. How'd you get here?
I don't know how to bullet point my life, but I currently live in the Dallas, Texas area, as do you. I spend time in the Austin area quite a bit with my girlfriend, Hannah, and her daughter, Isla. I have, as you pointed out, been formulating for 20 to 25 years. I spent 10 years as a chief clinical dietitian in acute and long-term care. I've formulated tons of supplements, as you talked about. Patented unique ingredients, things like T-cream and dynamine that are in basically every pre-workout fat burner energy drink out there. My newest ingredient is called paraxanthine. That's a metabolite of caffeine.
That one's super exciting.
Yeah, much cleaner than caffeine. It's a ton of excitement around it. I have a new ingredient that just launched called dileucine. That's smokes leucine for muscle protein synthesis. That's really the maintenance and growth of muscle. So that's really good, not only in sports nutrition, but we're looking at a lot of clinical applications like sarcopenia, cachexia, wounds, and all those kinds of things. And I originally went to school for business, and I was not really passionate about that, but I did enjoy marketing and branding. But I ended up going to a doctor between my sophomore and junior year when I had dropped maybe like 70 pounds. Whoa. And yeah, because I had got morbidly obese. I was up to 300 pounds. And I'm 6'2", 6'3". And I told him about my passion, and I was working out, and I was using all these supplements, and I was reading all the magazines and books, and I was on fire at that time with creatine and protein and all these things, and literally working out like 5+ days a week. And I explained like this body transformation, and I was loving supplements, and I was expecting him to trash supplements because this is, almost 30 years ago. And 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And instead he drew out a lifeline for me between 20 and 80. And he said, why not be happy between here and here? And that really like set me free to follow my passion. And so I did finish up my degree at Babson, which is a really good business specialty school. And I went back to school to get my master's, but I had to get a lot of prereqs, and I did that for a few years. And then I got into UNC Chapel Hill, got my master's in nutrition biochemistry, and that's the story.
Cool. Very cool. We could go in a ton of different directions, I know, but I want to talk a little bit about supplements specifically, because there are all kinds of different schools of thought. I've got definitely one subset of patients, and even myself sometimes too, who say, we should really be getting all of our nutrition, or at least most of our nutrition, from food. And then another subset of patients who really feel like you can't get everything from food, that you have to supplement to be really healthy. So knowing that you've been in the supplement industry for so long, where do you fall now, 20 plus years later?
Somewhere in between. I think like at points, like I was taking, over 100 supplements a day, and like believed in like the magic bullet, and I needed to be taking everything. Like I was the biggest consumer of supplements. Mm-hmm. But I also realized that I think that takes a toll essentially on your liver and your cytochrome P450 enzymes. I feel like your body is like, there's too much coming in.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of puts the brakes on a lot of these things. So I don't think it's good to take tons and tons and tons of things, and you have no idea what's affecting you in which way. It's like really polypharmacy. So it's very similar to like when I was in a nursing home, and we'd have 10 pages of MARS, medical application records, like where you had it's like 70 plus medications like for one person. And you don't know like how all these things are affecting them. Polypharmacy is like, we don't really understand how 2 medications work, let alone 3, 4, 10, 20, 70. It's like, so it's the same with supplements. And also there's a lot of these ingredients that are in food. And, some of these compounds, for example, like in grapefruit, can enhance the bioavailability and affect the cytochrome P450 pathway. Same with like black pepper. There's a lot of these compounds that affect that pathway. So you can end up kind of increasing the efficacy or potentially the danger of some of these ingredients by just having grapefruit juice, by having black pepper, by, all of these kinds of things. If it's fat soluble, by having it with oil or a fatty meal. So these are things like people don't understand or know. But I would say that to the point that we don't get enough of these nutrients in our diet, I would agree. Yeah. We're not getting things as organic. We're not getting, the soil isn't as rich as it used to be. And we aren't the same as we used to be. I think we're more fragile in a lot of ways. We're not as anti-fragile or resilient as we once were. We're getting exposed to more EMF, to more chemicals. There's literally more than 5,000 chemicals like that are coming out every year. There's very little documentation or understanding of them. And so we're constantly exposed to these chemicals in cleaners that are, in our air, that are in our cars, that are in our rugs, that are in our, everything. And we're constantly exposed to those. And so there's just a lot of stress on the system, more than there used to be. And there is less nutrients in the foods that we have. So I think when you add those things up, we need more nutrients. And I think I just use intuition to figure out what makes sense in the here and now. And I cycle through things. I don't like creating a baseline where I'm constantly having the same thing over and over. I don't really feel like that represents what would be natural in a diet. So that's something I do too, is cycle through.
So that's really fascinating, because I was going to ask, what are your go-to supplements that you take every day? But do you take a certain specific group of supplements every day, or it's just as needed where you're at, where you feel like your body is at any one particular time?
Yeah, it's more intuition based for me now.
Okay.
I same with like my diet. I do like carb cycling, protein cycling, fat cycling.
Mm-hmm.
I fast, and then I have periods of gorging and so
Yeah.
I have periods where I drink a lot of fluid, periods where I don't. I really just am at a point where I like confusing my body and doing what's called hormesis,
Mm-hmm.
like where I'm causing like a positive stress, a eustress on the body, and creating greater adaptation through that positive stress. But as far as the ingredients, I just believe in listening to my body and having intuition. And I think that's where, not only having the understanding of these ingredients and the physiology of your body, but tuning into your body. I've spent a lot of my life dissociated, traumatized, etc., where I couldn't tell you like what's happening with my body. But when you've done the inner work, when you do meditation, when you do more grounding, etc., like you can tune in. And I think you have a better sense of what your body needs.
Yeah. So would you, for someone who doesn't normally take supplements at all, what would be your best advice to a newbie? Are there some that you think you should start with, or do you think everybody can tap into that intuition and be able to discern what might work best for them as like an intro supplement stack?
Yeah, I think like getting like a global assessment from a doctor is helpful. Like I think more of a integrative functional medicine doctor or naturopath that's willing to use supplements, that has a good understanding of nutrition and supplements. A medical doctor has around 6 hours of nutrition knowledge in their total schooling.
If that.
So there's, I don't mean 6 credit hours. I mean literally 6 hours.
Yeah.
So like less than one day.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily qualified to speak on those topics. So for me, I think that makes sense to work with someone like that. And then not only getting the global assessment, which means like kind of talking to you, working through it, like seeing how, you present yourself, but also like getting the blood work and some of the tests that we can do now, like microbiome tests, as you're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And just getting more labs, like more data points. If you have a wearable, giving them that data in terms of your HRV, your sleep quality, things like that.
Yeah.
And I think once you see like where the potential problems lie and like where your shortfalls are potentially in terms of your nutrition, then you can make like some very good assessments on like what supplements to use from there. But I would say like there's some that are going to be, there's a fairly good chance, like in terms of deficiency, like magnesium, it's, around 70%, vitamin D, it's, 75%. There's a lot of nutrients that we fall short in general, that we're just not getting enough of. I would say most people don't get enough protein, especially if you're aged, especially if you're a woman. You tend to not get enough protein, especially in what's called a bolus, like making sure that you're getting enough in one sitting. Like it's actually not that great to just kind of graze on some protein throughout the day, because you're not optimizing muscle protein synthesis.
So you like kind of the Gabrielle Lyons, make sure each meal has 30 grams of protein.
Yes, exactly. So that
Okay.
30 grams is really about optimizing leucine. And that's the
Okay.
amino acid that drives muscle protein synthesis.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to get, anywhere from 2 to 3.5 grams of leucine in a meal. And that should be like around what you'd get with like 30 grams of animal protein.
Gotcha.
Now, a vegan protein actually falls very short of leucine. It has about half the level. So this is why in studies they've shown that for you to get the same muscle protein synthesis, you actually need twice the vegan protein as the animal protein.
Oh, that does not sound very tasty. One of these days, we're gonna get a vegan on because I have a hard time seeing from a scientific perspective how we can truly be healthy from a completely vegan diet versus incorporating some animals. But now that doesn't take into account the religious considerations and ethical considerations that some people have. But it sounds like, especially from listening to your book and looking at your content, it looks like you're kind of on the same page with feeling like the body really does do really well with animal sources of protein, as long as we source those animal sources well.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And chances are, like, you wouldn't get enough vitamin D or B12 as well. Some vegan foods have those supplemented now. You would have to construct the protein well. Whether it's complementary proteins because they're incomplete proteins, but certainly from the leucine standpoint that I mentioned, it's going to be very hard to maintain lean body mass unless you're essentially doubling your protein. We're seeing like around
really
one,
hard.
we're seeing around 1 gram of protein. Used to be we recommended per kilo. Now it's per pound. So it's twice that, 2.2 times that. So if you think about that, then a vegan really needs 2 grams of protein per pound. And when you're talking vegan proteins, you're also talking about like a lot of indigestibility and a lot of bloat. And then on a raw vegan standpoint, there's a lot of anti-nutrients, things like oxalates and phytates that can be problematic to the gut, to mineral absorption, literally cause a lot of these inflammatory autoimmune conditions. That's why, like, actually, like a full carnivore diet, it, again, like ethics aside, if that's kind of a standpoint you have, but again, you can go to like quality paleo ancestral, aligned, farming to have them sourced. But that's why that diet, the carnivore diet, could be like what you need for gut rest and kind of an autoimmune reset. Because a number of these inflammatory conditions, these autoimmune conditions, come from vegan sources.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's all right. Now let's shift a little bit.
Yep.
I want to know about your patented ingredient. You've got 20, is that right? 20 patented ingredients. We don't have to go down the list.
It's 40 now.
It's been updated. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have to update your bio.
That's okay.
So you 40.
And it's over 1,000 supplements now.
Oh my goodness. That's insane. Okay, give me your favorite. Like your favorite, the ones you're most excited about now that you have patents on, that you feel like are just revolutionary. Tell me your favorite ingredients that you've patented.
So BABA is beta amino isobutyric acid. So butyric acid is a short chain fatty acid that's well known for the gut and kind of a postbiotic. Like that's what probiotics make in the gut and is important to the health of the gut. Like incredible for autoimmunity, for inflammation, et cetera, like I was just mentioning. But this is a variant of that. And it's actually made from when you're intensely exercising, you break down your branched chain amino acids in the muscle pool. And one particular BCAA is called valine. Mm-hmm. And when you break down valine, it converts into beta amino isobutyric acid. And this is a signal to the body that your body's intensely working out. It's known as a myokine. And this signal has like basically everything associated with intense exercise is associated with beta. So improved VO2 max, bone mineral density. VO2 max is like a measure of like endurance and oxygen capacity, and bone mineral density, BDNF, which is neuroplasticity in the brain, increased glycogen storage and utilization. Glycogen is the stored form of glucose. Improved ketone utilization, another fuel source. Improved muscle mass as well as muscular density and recruitment, and essentially the innervation to that muscle. reduce fat mass and fatty acid utilization. Basically, everything that you can think of, the positive effects of exercise are associated with BABA. So I came out with that as a supplement, and we've shown that it, one, enhances levels of BABA in the body. And so your body believes it's either exercising when it's not, or exercising to a higher degree than it is.
More, yeah.
And so that's been really exciting to essentially augment your workouts. So that's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How would you use that in addition to, would it be in addition or instead of a creatine?
I would love those two together. So creatine is really great for, people talk about it with like phosphocreatine, and it has a lot to do as a phosphate donor and being a buffer. And this has to do with ATP generation as well as endurance and muscular power. So it was kind of a bodybuilder supplement originally, but now that we're about 700 studies in, we're actually seeing that it helps, again, with bone mineral density. So protecting bone mass, it helps with brain function, protecting against traumatic brain injury, and improving like as a nootropic, even acutely, like enhancing cognitive function. It helps with reproductive health with the testes and ovaries. It improves eyesight. Like, so now I really think creatine should be included in like a multi, essentially. I think it's a really powerful nutrient. And again, going back to the vegan thing, you're basically getting no creatine in your diet.
Right.
That comes from like red meat sources typically. So that would be, I think it's possible to have a healthy vegan diet if you're supplementing with a number of supplements. So I would have a well-constructed protein supplement. I would take additional D3, B12. I would take creatine. And I think you could do it. And I certainly wouldn't eat purely raw, especially, some of these things that have the anti-nutrients.
Right.
So anyway, so that's one ingredient.
Where do I get BABA? How do I get that?
So it's
I haven't even started taking
branded
creatine
as
yet.
Mito Burn.
Okay.
And so you can find it in a number of products on the market. Let's see. There's so many. Ergothioneine is a mitochondrial antioxidant. And so it could be the next new vitamin. So this is really exciting.
Okay.
Because we've shown that there's a deficiency for it, that you have a cognitive decline when you don't get enough of it. You only get it from organ meats, certain beans, and certain mushrooms. You have a unique transporter system for it in your body and a unique storage system for it in your body. Literally a transporter just for this ingredient, and we've never talked about it. Like, it's really just getting studies now over the last 3-4 years. Mm-hmm. So this is really exciting, realizing that your body's evolved for this nutrient, and it's a very powerful nutrient in that when we look at cellular antioxidants, there's a lot of confusing data where it can actually have negative effects, become pro-oxidant. Sometimes we want to be in a oxidatively stressed state because of signaling. Think of like you don't always want to protect cells. Like the idea of like antioxidants can actually be counterproductive. For example, when you have cancer, you're protecting cancer cells.
That's how we use ozone. Ozone's a really strong oxidizing agent. And so we use that to our benefit when we're using it therapeutically. Yeah.
Right. But what's cool about this as a mitochondrial antioxidant that has its transporter and storage system, your body intelligently uses this as needed. And really at the core of health to me is mitochondrial health. That's where ATP, adenosine triphosphate, this energy currency of the body is made. If you remember mitochondria, a little factory in the cell, the powerhouse of the cell. Yeah.
One of my kids just did the cell project not that long ago.
And well, let them know, like in those diagrams, you tend to see just one, but in a heart cell, like a cardiomyocyte, like you would have like 5,000 in one cell. So you have to realize like the more energy intensive that cell is, like think of brain cells and heart cells and things that are very energy dependent, there's going to be a lot more of those mitochondria.
Yep.
And so that's really cool. The next one I would say is paraxanthine, which is a metabolite of caffeine.
I was going to ask about this one if you
And
hadn't
so
already.
about 60% of the population is a slow metabolizer of caffeine.
Yeah.
So we have a half-life, meaning how long it takes to cut that level of like in your blood from where it's at to about half, how long that takes. That's known as a half-life in plasma. It goes anywhere from 1.5 to 10.5 hours for people. And this means to go from the half to a quarter to an eighth, which is like 3 half-lives. You're talking about a really long time. Like it could be days later for some of us to clear that caffeine, whereas some of us can have caffeine and go straight to bed. Like you've heard this. And so
does it change as we age?
There is like a degree of like habituation and adaptation, like a physiologic dependence is the habituation, and adaptation is like where you're kind of getting diminishing effects and it takes more and more to get that same result.
Oh, that's legit. But even just the half-life, I've noticed as I've gotten older, the half-life is much different.
Yeah.
I used to go drink some at 10 o'clock at night and go to sleep.
Yeah.
I cannot do that anymore.
Yeah. And actually women tend to be slower metabolizers than men. Certain drugs can really affect it, like the oral contraceptives really affect the rate at which you metabolize caffeine. Smoking actually increases it, and these contraceptives decrease it. So there's a lot going on there that's not that straightforward. But anyway, it's experienced much cleaner than caffeine. Basically, caffeine is the thing that has all the side effects. And when caffeine converts into paraxanthine, which can be a very slow conversion for a lot of us, and so we're stuck with the toxicity of caffeine. We're not getting the benefits of the paraxanthine. What we see with paraxanthine is almost all the benefits. So we actually see a much better result in terms of nitric oxide to the brain. It's 50% increase in nitric oxide with paraxanthine. We don't see that with caffeine. With our preclinicals, we saw increased BDNF, that neuroplasticity, decreased beta amyloid plaque, increased glutathione and catalase, decreased oxidative stress.
That's huge.
Increased, obviously, adenosine inhibition and wakefulness. That's like the mechanism of kind of the CNS stimulation that you get from caffeine. Yeah. And I don't know, like you see increased acetylcholine, dopamine. The dopamine's about 50% greater than over caffeine. So you kind of get this mood lift and swagger that you don't get from caffeine. So that's been really exciting. But I mean, not only is it like better results, like we actually did a 10K race, and then they did a kind of multitasking test called the Berg card sorting task test before and after this 10K race. And what we saw between the two was caffeine increased mental errors pretty dramatically, like over placebo. And we saw a decrease in mental errors with paraxanthine. So literally, like even after the 10K race, they actually performed better at this test than they did before the race.
That's really interesting. What do you think is the biochemistry behind that? Because I always thought caffeine was supposed to increase mental performance.
The only place now that we're looking at fast and slow metabolizers in this, it's called CYP1A2 gene. When we delineate that and we look at this research, if you're a slow metabolizer, that you tend to have worse performance cognitively and physiologically, and those that are fast metabolizers do better. So this is why like a lot of the caffeine data is very equivocal, and sometimes it's absurdly high. Like the studies are insane. Like there's so many studies that like use like a gram of caffeine, which I don't know if you understand what that is, but like
a cup of coffee, isn't that like 200 or 100 milligrams?
It'd be like 5 cups of like double espressos, like or something. It would be just an absurd amount of caffeine.
Yeah.
Or like a Bang, which had like 300 million. It'd be like drinking 3 Bangs or something. So that'd be a lot.
Oh, no, that sounds
So
gross.
this is very clean. We're actually showing improved HRVs too, where caffeine worsened HRVs. So, and we think that has to do with the fact that it's neuroprotective and is working very well in the brain. And we have a e-gaming study coming out where we're looking at their performance, and we actually see a time effect with the e-gamers where when we looked at like over 6 weeks, we actually see their performance improve with continued use. So this is really exciting in terms of, like, usually with caffeine, there's a declination in performance. We're actually seeing them improve week to week. So really cool stuff. So that one's exciting. And then probably the last one that's really exciting to me is dileucine. Leucine, as we talked about, drives muscle protein synthesis. About 15 years ago, I was digging into some physiology and found out that there's this PEPT1 transporter in the gut that preferentially takes up di and tripeptides over a single amino acid. So you tend to think the smallest building block of a protein is an amino acid, one amino acid. Mm-hmm. Ton of amino acids makes a polypeptide that's like a full protein. Mm-hmm. But 2 or 3 is a di or tripeptide. So that's 2 or 3 amino acids together. So my theory was, well, what if we took 2 or 3 leucines? Because leucine getting to plasma is not about the absolute dose. It tends to be with signaling. It's how quickly they go up in plasma. So if I can get leucine there faster, barring like injection, like then maybe I can optimize muscle protein synthesis better. And we made it, and that's definitely what it does. Like, it's about 80% better at optimizing muscle protein synthesis. And leucine was considered the gold standard for the last 100 years. So we've kind of upended that. So this is really like the whole new gold standard for anabolism or muscle growth or maintenance, which doesn't just mean bodybuilding and sports nutrition. Like, muscle is probably the number one predictor of your longevity. So it's really critical. And as we age, we actually become leucine or anabolic resistant. So it actually takes more leucine or more protein that contains leucine as we age. So that 25 goes to 30, 35, 40. And then if you have infections or other things going on that put you in a negative nitrogen state, then that's going to increase that need even further. And then it tends to be, as we age, we eat less protein, and we certainly have smaller boluses, as I was talking about. So like kind of smaller amounts of protein kind of throughout the day. Yep. And so we're never optimizing muscle protein synthesis. Then we get sarcopenic obesity, where you're trading muscle for fat as we age, and kind of maybe you can keep a similar weight, but that body composition is very different. So this is really exciting for both sports performance as well as clinical applications, especially if we combine it with an anti-catabolic, and kind of the gold standard there, and that's preventing muscle protein breakdown, is HMB, which is a metabolite of leucine as well. And so if we were to combine these two, we believe that, we haven't done the studies yet, but they would have a really powerful effect on what's called net muscle accretion, or kind of the net muscle growth. If you're preventing breakdown and increasing synthesis, then that's a really good weight in your favor to accrue more muscle.
So how did these ideas come to fruition? Like, what would make, and is it you personally, or is it a team, or is it a business? What makes someone say, I want to take caffeine and make it better, or I want to take berberine and make it better?
Oh, that was another one I did, dihydroberberine. Yeah. That's like an optimized form of berberine I came out with.
Yeah.
I get asked that a lot, like, and sometimes like people are dumbfounded about how this metabolite of caffeine, like, they're like, how is that possible that you patented that? Like, how did someone else not do that?
Yeah.
It's a great question. I think, like, a lot of times there's like visionary inventions that people like never would have thought of this like in a million years, and someone just comes out of it with, thin air. But I think like a lot of inventions come out of things that we see every day, but someone sees differently. And everyone thinks this is just the way it is. And I don't know, that's just the way it is. I've just always assumed that's the way it is. My brain does not work like that. I've very much conditioned it to like ask questions and question even the obvious. And I go after the things that are the most desirable or the most used, like things like caffeine, or I'm working on like the better alcohol. I went after leucine, which is one of the most important ingredients to do with muscle in our bodies. These are the ingredients that I'm going after. Like berberine actually outperformed metformin in studies head to head. And, I wanted to make a better better berberine, really.
Yeah.
And so like I'm going after these ingredients, like saying, how can I make something that's popular, that's well understood? How can I make it better?
Nice. So it's your creative process.
Yeah.
Like a songwriter writes songs and gets inspired by different things. You're just like the science nerd version of it.
Science nerd songwriter. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. No, I love it. I love it. And so alcohol is next.
I'm working on it.
Maybe.
I'm working on it. Yeah.
Now I'm trying to think, what else could we do? How do we, like, the obvious that I wish someone would have brought to America so much sooner is how can we have safe, effective oral health products that don't involve fluoride? And thankfully, we've got some now. Like we kind of took advice from Japan and started introducing hydroxyapatite into products. So it's slow, but now I'm going to be thinking different. Like, what would Shawn do?
All right, folks, that does it for this episode of the Flourish Podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode where we will bring Shawn back to finish our conversation. We have a lot more exciting topics to cover and can really get into some nitty-gritty of things. So I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.